Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I thought we could talk about the books that I'm planning to read this quarter. We have about 20 books that I want to get to, so let's just dive right in. So first up we will go over these three. So we have Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, The Well of Ascension, and The Way of Kings. So I actually own this book and the third book in the Mistborn trilogy, and then I also own this, but they're all in mass market. So I wanted to get them in the full-size hardback and or paperback for my library, because they're a lot easier to read when they are full-size as opposed to paperback to mass market. Unfortunately, my library gave me the mass market copy of Well of Ascension, which is what I have already. So I likely will return this and just read my own book. I have read Mistborn before, but I want to continue the trilogy this year, so I need to reread Mistborn, and then I want to read Mistborn and then go to Way of Kings, because this is like the reading order for his Cosmere. I've read, you know, Elantris and all those prior to this, but yes, so I want to read these two things, rather the trilogy, and then get into Way of Kings, hopefully. What are you doing? Hopefully in the next couple of months. And then next up, in regards to fantasy, we have Fevered Star. This is the second book in the series is called Black Sun, but the first one I know for sure is called Black Sun. And Black Sun was one of my favorite fantasies of 2020. I absolutely adored it. This is the sequel. We then have Empire of Wild by Sherry Demeline, about Joan, who is searching for her missing husband, who's been missing for a year. Her family has lived in a tightly knit rural community for generations, but no one keeps the old ways until they have to. That moment has arrived for Joanne. One morning, grieving and severely hungover, she hears a shocking sound coming from inside a revival tent in a gritty Walmart parking lot. It is the voice of Victor. He doesn't remember her, he has a new name, and he is on a mission to spread the word of Jesus and to grow his flock. She suspects there is something dark and terrifying at work. It was recommended for Indigenous literature, so I'm excited to get to this one. It sounds very like dark and horrifying. We have The Five Wounds. Amadeo. He lives in New Mexico, and he has been given the part of Jesus in the Good Friday procession. He is preparing feverishly for his role when his 15-year-old daughter, Angel, shows up pregnant on his doorstep and disrupts his plans for personal redemption. This fall spans the baby's first year as 5 generations of the family converge together, each bringing expectations that Amadeo, who often solves his problem with a beer in his hand, doesn't think he can live up to. It is a debut novel, and I'm excited to read this. I've heard fantastic things, and I'm looking for more like interpersonal, emotional family stories. Next up, we have The Water Dancer. I read this by this author. The name is like really struggling to come to mind. It's about the man who writes the letter to his son about growing up as a black man in the US and kind of like his experience and trying to teach his son. This one is about Hiram Walker, born into bondage. When his mother was sold away, Hiram was robbed of all memory of her, but he was gifted with a mysterious power. Years later, when Hiram almost drowns in a river, the same power saves his life. This brush with death births an urgency in Hiram and a daring scheme to escape from the only home he's ever known. So begins an unexpected journey that takes Hiram from the corrupted grandeur of Virginia's proudest plantations to desperate guerrilla cellos in the wilderness. From the coffin of the Deep South to dangerously idealistic movements in the North, even as he's enlisted in the underground war between slavers and the enslaved, Hiram is resolved to rescue the family he left behind indoors. So, again, another family saga, emotional. I'm here for it, and I loved this author's writing in the first book that I read by them. All right, next up we have Almond. The main character was born with a brain condition that makes it hard for him to feel emotions like fear or anger. He doesn't have a lot of friends, and then he experiences a random act of violence that shatters his world. He retreats into silent isolation until a troubled teenager shows up. They form a surprising bond, and he finds his life but when that friend finds his life at risk, he will step outside his comfort zone to become a hero of his own story. Another story that I've heard fantastic things about. That's probably what I'm just gonna say for all of these, because all of them I have heard good things about or have just been interested in. So next up we have Tin Man, which I absolutely adore this cover. And this is fairly short, and it says, Ellis and Michael are 12-year-old boys. When they first became friends, for a long time it was just the two of them. Many years later, Ellis is married and Michael is nowhere in sight, which leads to the question, what happened to the years in between? An unforgettable and heartbreaking novel celebrating love in all its forms and all the little moments and same kindness and small kindnesses that make up a life. This sounds emotional, but also very heartwarming, and say it with me, I'm excited. Next up is a book that I probably don't need to say that much about because it's quite popular, but it is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This is about a magical cafe where you can revisit memories, and a lot of people have cried at this. I believe it's little vignettes or short stories of people that have visited this cafe and what memories they went to and the lessons they learned. I don't know if they're able to change the past or if they're only just able to go back and kind of view the memory itself. So again, very emotional, and I'm excited. My quest for my reading this year is not only to branch out to other genres, but also 30% of the books that I read being 5 stars. Last year, I think it was like less than 10%. And so I'm looking for books that I think will be very emotional and tug on my heartstrings, because those are the stories that I tend to connect to the most. So I'm just searching them out. Next up, we have The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. And this explores the raw and tender places where Black women and girls dare to follow their desires and pursue a momentary reprieve from being good. The 9 stories in this collection feature 4 generations of characters grappling with who they want to be in the world, caught as they are between the church's double standards and their own needs and passions. It's fairly short, and I'm sure it's going to pack quite a punch. Alright, so next up we have The Book of Everlasting Things, and this seems to be a fiction with a romantic subplot, or that follows a love story, but I don't necessarily know if it's a romance. But it follows 2 people during the struggle for Indian independence. Severed from each other, they make a series of fateful decisions that will change the course of their lives and echo through generations to come. In the days that follow, they each must decide how much of the past they are willing to let go and what it will cost them. Lush, sinuous, and deeply romantic, this is the story of 2 lovers and 2 nations split apart by forces beyond their control, yet bound by love, memory, and history. So, this is very much reminding me of another book that I will be reading, and that is The Stationery Shop. This is about 2 people who meet in a stationery shop, and it is their love story spanning decades. So they meet originally, and then they meet again 60 years later. And then that's, I guess, when they reunite. Next up, we have Time is a Mother. I have read Unearthly or Briefly Gorgeous by this author. The previous collection was a series of letters that he wrote to his mom, and then this is a follow-up collection of poems that he wrote for his mother after her death. Alright, so next up we have kind of a break from all of the emotional stuff, and we have The Book of Cold Cases. This is from the author of The Sundown Motel and Broken Girls. I gave The Sundown Motel 4 or 5 stars. I gave Broken Girls like 3. I'm leaning more towards 2 stars. And so I really want to read this one and see how I feel about it. I love this author, and she always includes somewhat of a ambiguous paranormal element to her stories that people either really like or really don't like. And this one is about a true crime blogger who is interviewing the women acquitted of 2 cold case slayings. So it's set in 2 timelines, 1977 and 2017. And I've heard great things about this one. The Broken Girls was kind of mixed in regards to people that liked the first book or like her as an author. So I'm hoping that I will like this one and it will go that way rather than the way of the Broken Girls. All right, so next up we have Black Cake, and this is about two siblings after their mother leaves them a puzzling inheritance. It is a traditional Caribbean black cake made from the family recipe with a long history and a voice recording. And in the voice recording, she is basically recounting her life moving from the Caribbean to, I'm assuming, America, because she has been accused of murder. And then I think it's revealed that they have a sibling that they've never met, and it's just a recounting of her life. And again, emotional family saga, very excited, heard great things. And this cover is just so layered and beautiful. All right, next up we have another mystery that I'm excited for, which is Wrong Place, Wrong Time. I don't know too much about this. I heard about it from Meg with Books. She said this is one of her favorite mysteries of last year, and all I know is it has to do with time travel, and it's something of a different mystery than the genre is used to, and I'm excited to get into that. Alright, so next up we have Young Mungo. This is by the author of Shujibane, which is a book that I have on my TBR already that I own. And this is about two men who start off as friends, and they're basically supposed to be rivals, and they fall in love, and it follows their love story growing up in kind of a rough neighborhood. I have heard that Shujibane is very emotional. I haven't really heard too much about this, but it was, Shujibane was a Booker Prize winner, so I'm expecting this to be amazing. All right, two more. Next up, we have A Psalm for the Wild built. This is a cozy fantasy, I believe. I heard Allison Pages talking about this. I think this is her channel name. This was like one of her favorites of the year. It's by Becky Chambers, and I think this is like a cozy fantasy or sci-fi. Yeah, it's sci-fi. Robots have gained self-awareness. They disappeared into the wilderness, and a monk decides to find them. I don't know much else. It's very short, and I've heard the second book in the series is like, you have to read the second book for it to just tie all together, and I'm excited because I have delved a little bit into cozy fantasy, cozy sci-fi, and I like slice of life, very quiet stories. And then the last read that I have is There There. This follows 12 characters from Native communities, all traveling to the big Oakland powwow, all connected to one another in ways they may not realize. The main character is newly sober and trying to make it back to the family she left behind. Another is pulling his life together after his family's death and working at the powwow to honor his memory. And then a 14-year-old is coming to perform in a traditional dance for the first time. Together, this chorus of voices tells of the plight of the urban Native American grappling with a complex and painful history, with an inheritance of beauty and spirituality, with communion and sacrifice and heroism. This is a poignant and unflinching, utterly contemporary, and truly unforgettable. So, a lot of debuts. I'm reading a lot of debuts in the next couple of months. So, another one I am excited for. Do I need to say that again? I do not, because that was the last book that I have to talk about. So, those are the books that I will be reading over the next couple of months. I would love to hear your thoughts down below if you have read any of these, if you recommend them or not, which ones I should, shove ahead of the other ones. I would love to know. If you don't have anything to say, leave a book stack emoji down in the comments. If you are looking for more content from me, you can check out my Instagram or my podcast Instagram. You can also check out my podcast on all your favorite streaming platforms. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.